Today, we do a deep dive into the Viennese waters of lomography, who after 33 years have released what one could describe as their magnum opus, the most serious with a capital S camera they have released since the company first founded the lomographic movement in 1992. We're of course talking about the Lomo MCA, an evolution of their cornerstone camera, and one I can't wait to start discussing and stop introing. Oh wait, I can control that. Let's just start the intro.
The kind of photography that would become part of the human being. Press a button and have the picture.
Welcome to In an Instant. My name is Ben, and today we're talking all about the Lomo MCA, lomography's wholly new centerpiece. A 35mm LiDar autofocusing camera with a point-and-shoot style body, replete with manual controls, onboard flash, automatic focus, or classic LCA manual focus zones. On specs alone, it's ostensibly the modern 35mm camera that everyone's been asking for. A quintessential package for the modern era of film photography. A sharp blade for the analog revolution. This is at least what I've been told. During my recent tour to China, I spoke a lot in interviews about the notion of the post-digital era, as in the current period where film is now a choice, rather than the fundamental technology used to record all images. The impact this has had on the industry is obviously tremendous, and we're only now seeing companies like Kodak, Fujifilm, and Polaroid catch up to the decades-long restructuring necessary to service this now boutique industry. But lomography, which first flew its flag in 1992, like me, built an ethos around imperfect cameras and the spirit of alternative photography before film itself was the alternative. And as lomography's birth synced up perfectly with the rapid rise of digital photography, Lomo only grew stronger. Many chose to reject the sanitary nature of modern sensors and lenses in favor of something better approximating the human experience, or one's own unique perspective on being alive, with there being only one of those in existence in case you hadn't heard. Lomography's weapon in this crusade was the Lomo LCA, a Soviet-made automatic point-and-shoot camera that Lomo's founders discovered on a trip to Prague, just after the city's liberation from the USSR. The camera was an impulse buy that actually worked out for once, as the low-cost LCA produced punchy, colorful, contrasty, dreamy pictures, Lomo pictures, the essence of what that means, which inspired Lomography's founders to buy a bunch of them up and sell them around the world. A movement was smoldering over the heat of the bangers coming from the LCA, a way of seeing, a way of thinking. At one point, Russia even agreed to resume production at the original state-owned Lomo factory to supply lomography with these cameras. Eventually, Russia pulled the rug, forcing lomography to handle camera production all by themselves. And through this burden of having to actually make cameras now, lomography decided to make other cameras too. And that's where all these crazy Wilding, Doinkman, OP, and OG cameras from the modern Lomo universe come from. But as we all crested through the post-digital era with chaotic changes to camera, film, and chemical production, we began to see the other side as almost an entirely new cottage industry. And the modern film shooter started to want a little more sauce on their rigatoni. See, analogists have been mostly using antique cameras over the last 2 decades. Besides lomography's unique lineup, not very many companies bothered to make nicely made new film cameras anymore, besides Leica, who, is in a class of its own. The Impossible Project and ultimately Polaroid could be said to be pioneers at this point for introducing the teched-up Impossible I1 in 2016, as advanced film-compatible cameras would only slowly trickle out for the following 10 years, and mostly by companies specializing in instant film products. Manufacturers only began to meet the increased demand for modernized 35mm cameras in 2024, when a couple of major electronic film cameras debuted from Mint Camera and Pentax, whose Rollei 35 and Pentax 17 drops were kind of like being the first Soviet astronauts in space. Someone's gotta be the first guy to do it, and you hope they survive, but there's like a chance this doesn't work out and their heads explode up there or something. We don't really know what's gonna happen. Making these cameras was an expensive and risky endeavor by both companies in a market that hadn't yet proven its desire for a $600 and $800 35mm newly made camera. Lomography was quietly not far behind, and a year later joined the pack by introducing the Lomo MCA, a complete ground-up evolution to the legacy LCA, a new manual film camera for $550 USD. The debut of the Rollei 35 and Pentax 17 were assuredly exciting, But both cameras had notable caveats upon release. The Pentax 17 was a half-frame camera, and although after hundreds of exposures with it I've ended up loving the 17, the fact that it doesn't have autofocus and takes images half the resolution of a standard frame ended up making it not the most absolute perfect kit for everyday film shooting, for me at least. The Rollei 35 has autofocus and shoots 35mm full frame, but with caveats in its execution that left some room to grow. So when I heard Lomography was gonna choke up on the bat and take a massive swing in this direction, I wondered if that too would be too good to be true. Especially given the camera promises literally everything I'd want in a new 35mm point and shoot, down to its lens. For years, my core everyday 35mm setup was the ultimate in compact deliciosity. The Japanese-made Leica CL paired with the Lomo Minotaur 1 lens, which is quite literally the lens from the Lomo LCA rehoused for use in other cameras. This lens is unequivocally my favorite 35mm lens, something I brought everywhere, every when, and recorded some key moments of my life with. So the notion that everything about this rig now has a massively updated form, including the lens in the now upgraded Minotaur 2, and with onboard flash, autofocus, a self-timer, PC sync flash, manual wind, rewind, which, like I said, it's all so freaking good on paper. A notoriously flimsy surface. So what happens when it's not on paper anymore, and is instead in your hands? What then? What about when not on paper, but in hands? The moment the camera lands in your hands, something very distinct occurs. And I know it because I've seen this reaction by almost every single person I've handed this camera to. They go, oh wow, nice. It's heavy, solid, metal. Mi gusta, mi piace. Depends on their native language, of course. This is not your dad's Lomography camera, and certainly not your stepdad's. In fact, it strays massively from the notion that Lomo represents merely toy cameras. Rather, it is distinctly premium by all discernible metrics. I've put a lot of film through it over the last few weeks, the #1 way to test a camera, and every passing roll is another test of its endurance. Can it hang with my pace? Is it durable? A lot of cranking with that top winder, a lot of rewinding with that bottom winder, seeing if all these components last. I've only been able to spend a little over a month with it, so I don't know for sure if the camera is up to that task full time, but right now it seems to be hanging. It's a chiller. It's a chiller, folks. It's a chiller for sure. But talk to me in 5 years, we'll see if it's holding up. Its components seem to be very good. It's not just fancy window dressing. The caveats are not creeping in, as I feared. And the images that come out of it seem to confirm the notion that this is indeed an autofocusing 35mm camera with a Minotaur lens, just as it appeared. When you hit perfect focus, this gives you a pretty clean image, but not too clean. Part of the charm of the original Minotaur 1 is that it has like crazy sharpness where you want it, and a bit of fall off around the edges where maybe you don't, or at least I don't. At 32mm, it's edging toward a wide angle look, and the Minotaur 2 seems to have reduced some of the vignetting classic to the Minotaur 1, while keeping a pleasant amount of that soft-edged vibe. The autofocus seems pretty good, but sometimes shots that should be at infinity seem maybe one step backed off from infinity. It seems like the close-up shots are usually the sharpest. And LiDAR is great, but it doesn't always hit exactly where you expect if you're not double checking it, which is why it's great to have the manual override option. And maybe it is best to lock the lens at infinity when that's your desired composition. I don't know. Now let's take a look at the general operation of the camera. On the top plate, we see our multiple flash modes, our self-timer settings, which is a really nice to have feature, and our ISO settings. The camera has a DX code reader, but you can manually override that here. The on switch can deposit you onto AF or MF mode. On AF mode, you half press the shutter to focus. It's zippy. The top screen will tell you the focusing distance it racked to. And if you were to choose a manual aperture or shutter speed, it will let you know if you're under or over. On MF mode, you can select your zone of focus like on the Lomo LCA camera. I'm glad they brought this classic look in the operation of the LCA to this model. Reminds you that you're still home, you haven't strayed too far away, and you have your phone so you can call and get a cab or get your mom to pick you up. The focus is still motor driven, so even on manual focus, the motor will bring the lens to your selected zone upon half pressing. And as you can see, your aperture settings are of course on the lens as well, or set it to auto. Dials to the right of the top plate let you control your shutter speed or exposure compensation. The MX button is for multiple exposures, so you can fire the shutter multiple times without having to advance the frame, because you're just a freak like that. After you do fire the shutter, you can't fire it again unless you advance the winding lever, presenting a fun infographic. I found one of the quirks of this camera that will not be upgraded from quirk to caveat is that you often have to wind it once and then give it a little baby wind again so that the screen reflects the proper frame number and lets you shoot again. The viewfinder is very simple and provides you with interior frame lines to more accurately frame at closer distances, something rangefinder users are fully versed with, but might take some getting used to for SLR converts. I don't think it has full coverage, as images seemed wider than what I saw in the viewfinder, which is my typical experience with the LCA series, and I actually like the bonus coverage on the final images. The finder also displays lights like the LCA, with flashing blue indicating a problem like too close focus, with the minimum focusing distance being 0.4 meters. A steady blue light means you're good, dude. An orange light indicates your shutter speed is below 1/30, which is kind of a whoops. I know you have steady hands, but you're no surgeon. The flash on the MCA isn't something I'll spend too much time talking about because it works. There is a rear and a front curtain sync mode for different effects, and it's a relief to have on board where the OG LCA required external flash units. This camera initially arrives to you with a degree of pizzazz that lomography fans have come to know and love. With an included UV filter, an awesome magic wrap cloth, a leather strap, some flash filters, a splitzer, which I've been meaning to use, but honestly have been so occupied with just running film through the camera I never got to it. And the best, most ridiculous thing here is a rechargeable Lomography branded CR2 battery, which when plugged in is quantifiably a certified doinker. The first battery to be awarded this distinction. The battery lasts a few rolls in my experience, up to 10, and does have to be removed to be charged again. The provided rechargeable one is legendary for looking like this, but you might want to keep some disposable CR2s around just in case yours drains. The camera can't operate with the battery dead, as its mechanisms are electronically controlled. And there is nothing worse than a dead camera. Like being forced to see with your eyes, which have no external storage media. Now I'd like to spend a minute discussing the design of this camera. It's presented in two colorways at the moment, both slick. It has some familiar sights, such as the aforementioned focusing lever, but the camera is very much its own thing visually. Perhaps the most controversial choice would be the quote printed on the top of the plate, which reads, "Everybody is equal before the lens and behind it." The statement itself isn't controversial whatsoever, but the typeface maybe is. There's a vibe to it I wouldn't typically associate with Lomo. That being said, the charm of how random it is kind of grew on me. And now I don't even mind that it's there in lieu of a hot shoe or a cold shoe even. It's nice, and a good guiding principle if you need one. And I think you need one. I can't say I've gotten used to the Lomo logo on the front looking like handwritten, however, and I think I'll eventually customize mine. I understand the desire to add some lomography whimsy to an otherwise serious and very angular machine. You know, its shell is all metal with a leatherette wrap, solid strap lugs on here. Whoever's designing these cameras at Lomo has been seriously based lately. All of these details just feel really solid and in a much more robust direction than the Featherlight Pentax 17 and more delicate build of the Rollei 35. I think this thing will be able to endure some serious life. It better, because I'm about to throw some life at it. Just like that, I'm hearing from the CEO of In an Instant, and he's saying we need to do pros and cons or he's gonna fire me. Hold on. You don't always have to be so dramatic with me. Yeah, you don't need to threaten me. I was gonna do the pros and cons. I do the pros and cons segment like every review. Okay, almost every review. Pros. Minotaur 2 lens. It is sharp. It is in an AF camera. The analog deities have brought me the sum of all my hopes for a 35mm camera. I can't believe this is my life. I can't believe this is my life. Smiling through it all. Build quality. This is what the modern film shooter deserves. Something I would call damn near distinguished. And I don't want to hear about the price tag of $550. They're not making a million units of this thing. This is practically a bespoke creation for a niche market. Let's not pretend it's cheap to pull that off. And features. This is a truly holistically conceived camera with several flash modes, the manual controls of both aperture and shutter speed, the auto modes work great. This is a really has-it-all solve for at least where I'm at in my use of 35mm film. I don't know about you. That's at least, I'm just speaking from personal preference as a YouTube channel haver. And cons. There aren't many, but One would be viewfinder simplicity. I like that the LED light system beckons to the LCA era, but now that we have autofocus, it would be helpful to be able to see the distance the camera focused to in the viewfinder. The i2 has similar LiDAR autofocusing, but a small readout inside the finder keeps you abreast of what's going on, focus and settings wise. Beyond that, there isn't much to knock this camera for, and I seriously hope I have found a forever camera in the MCA. And why is it called the MCA, you might ask? It's a great question. Actually don't know the answer to that. Guess what it stands for in the comments. And thank you for watching. In an instant, go ahead and collapse the Soviet Union onto that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more reviews, breakdowns, shoots, and all things instant or not instant in some cases. Bye.